Have you been thinking about hiring an interior designer, but you're worried it's too expensive? Well, I think most of you guys know what you want. You just need a little bit of help pulling it all together. Okay guys, let's get into my 10 steps for creating the perfect feature wall. And hopefully I'll save you from making some big mistakes. First question, which wall? There are so many to choose from. Here's a few ideas. Behind the sofa always looks great, and we tend to walk into a room and look at the sofa, so that's a natural spot for a feature wall. My favorite is behind a master bed, or really any bedroom. It just looks great, and it can even be in lieu of a headboard. The entry is also a fantastic place. It's kind of your chance to make a really wow first impression. Kitchen, a lot of people don't think about a feature wall in a kitchen, but if you don't have a wall with lots of upper cabinets, you could run that splashback all the way to the ceiling and it makes an amazing impact. Okay, behind a vanity. This is especially true in a powder bath. This is where all your guests go, so make it special. Do something bold. A lot of people think I'm crazy when I put this photo up, but I think it's really fun and it's a nice thing to look at when you walk into the bathroom. All right, the larger bathroom. In this case, they've actually not only put it on the wall, but on the floor and the ceiling. I think it's absolutely amazing. Now, in a bathroom, it can look good behind the mirrors or behind the bathtub or in the shower, but just make sure it's not a messy wall. By messy, meaning like lots of other things on it, and make sure it's a wall that you see when you first walk into the bathroom so that you appreciate it, even if you're just wandering by in the hallway. Clean walls, the simpler the better. Now by clean, I definitely don't mean dirt. What I mean is to start with no weird shapes. Do you see this? That is truly awful. I hate it. You want the simplest, dare I say it, even squarest wall you can find. Now one thing they did right here was they painted the vent. Okay, it's better if it's not interrupted by things like doors or beams or anything. Do you see how this wall just, I mean, the color scheme is great, yes, but it's just not working because it's interrupted by all these other things. Something very similar here is asymmetrical windows. If you've got a window on one side and not on the other side, or just one weird window, it doesn't look so good, because what you end up with is a feature wall that basically is like an upside down L or a weird geometric shape. I like simple whole shapes for my feature walls. No outside corners. They are impossible to get right. Look here. And by outside corner, I mean never finish a feature wall on an outside exposed edge. It's where they chip. If it's wallpaper, it's going to peel. If it's paint, you're going to see all these little nicks in here. It just looks really bad and unprofessional. Now, they would have been much better to just run this black on this wall, across here, and around the other side. So the whole blade wall was one color. That actually would have been really effective. Add art, because your feature wall was made for it. Now, here's just a few examples. I love gallery walls where you have sort of an asymmetrical collection of different art pieces in different frames. And how much more effective is this? Because the white pops out off of the dark wall. It would not have been as effective on just a plain white wall with white frames. Now, everybody loves a family wall. I don't think I've ever had a client that didn't say that they wanted one somewhere, and they do look really good on a feature color. Now, if you've got a fantastic piece of art, especially if it's really big, there's a reason gallery walls are often painted. Modern art galleries are probably mostly white, but a lot of the older ones used to be painted in rich, dark tones because they actually make the art look even better. They make it stand out. Skirting decisions. I bet you didn't even think about your skirting. Okay, by that I mean this little bit down here at the bottom of your wall. You're going to paint it, or are you going to leave it white or whatever color your skirting is? Now, it is more modern to paint it. I know it's hard to see, but they've actually painted it, and they've also even painted the light switch, something to very seriously consider, because this would have looked terrible if that sorry, not light switch, it's an outlet, silly. If that was a white, it would be like a pimple on this beautiful wall. So if you want it to be really clean, paint the whole thing from top to bottom. In this case, they took a traditional sort of space and even painted the architrave and the door. So they avoided my weird upside down L that I hate, and they still created one big square, even though there are things interrupting the flow of the wall. Now, in a slightly more traditional space, it can be quite effective to leave the skirting as an accent. Now, this space doesn't have a crown, but this would look equally good if it had a big, massive crown molding, or as we call it here in Australia, cornice molding up here. Try before you buy. This is worth the effort, people. You don't want to be disappointed. So go to Bunnings or whatever your local paint store is. These little paint pots are generally about $8. Get 2 or 3, get 10, and then brush it out. Don't decide right then. Make sure you do 2 or 3 coats. Do not do like a messy thin coat, because that's not giving you the true picture. But then I say live with it for a full 24 hours. I want you to look at it in the daytime, in the afternoon, by lamplight, whatever lights you have in there. Some spaces have a lot of green light if they've got a lot of greenery outside, a lot of warm light if it's on a, like, say, a western wall. So it's worth seeing how that color or material changes over a 24-hour period. Okay, so what's your feature wall going to be? There's lots of different materials for every personality. Now, I love textured timber. I recently did this for a client and it just looks amazing. They're actually tiles. It's not even real timber. It's warm, it's sexy, it's modern without being sterile. Then, of course, there's the rustic brick wall. I also did one of these for my clients where it wasn't even real brick. We bought this plastic textured stuff and just got a painter friend of mine to faux it, and we did it really on a shoestring, and it looked so cool. There's the dry stacked stone look, very luxury and very tactile and beautiful. Of course, wallpaper, mine and I think the rest of the world's favorite feature wall. You know, a few years ago, people said, oh, it's not going to last. Remember wallpaper in the 80s? But wallpaper in the 80s was like every single wall in a tiny print. Now we tend to use wallpaper just as a feature, and it's really just like art for your wall. All right, paneling. What used to be really expensive can actually be achieved super affordably. I did this for a client where we just ripped, when I say ripped, that's a word for cutting, MDF strips, stuck it right on the plasterboard and just painted the whole thing, and it looked amazing, like huge impact for very little money. Then, of course, there's tongue and groove board. You can use real tongue and groove boards. These are painted, but you could also use actual floorboards on the wall. Or if you're on a budget, you can just get those sheets that already have the V grooves put into them. Is 2 walls better than 1? So you don't just have to do 1 wall. In this case, they've run this beautiful timber up the stair, added this little curve, and continued it. Can you imagine how boring this tiny little staircase would be without this feature? And just adding this curve, it had just upped the luxury quotient massively. I personally love the effect of taking a feature wall and running on the ceiling. Now, I know that this is like $1 million space, but honestly, in much more simple spaces, you can get a great effect by running it all the way under the ceiling or even part way like that bathroom I showed you before. In this case, they've done 2 different features. They've got the timber behind the vanities and this lovely sort of off black on this wall. Now that's really effective. I want you to imagine what this space would be like. All of this richness on this wall. If this was just white, it would kind of look like they forgot, like they hadn't finished it. And I just think it's really effective. So you may need more than 1 feature so that one doesn't feel really heavy and the other one feels really unfinished. Emphasize the architecture. And by that, we are accenting the accents. Okay, so anything in your space that is naturally defined, like a niche, is always a good place to put a feature color or feature texture. In this case, they've done both. Anything, any kind of bump out on your wall, in this case, it's a fireplace, but sometimes people have weird columns, put a feature paint on it, put a feature timber on it, put something on it, because then it looks really purposeful and not like you just have a weird kind of architectural, block or setback or bump out on something. Add some lighting because your feature needs to be featured. Pendants look amazing in front of a feature wall, especially if you've got light and dark or a play of textures like they've done here. I know I sound like a broken record, but imagine this if this was just a white wall. It would be very boring. Here we've got wall lights. Now, we didn't even talk about mirrors on walls, which I think all of you are going, oh my God, that's so naff. But it can be really beautiful. These are beveled and bronzed, and I think it's really effective. Now, if you've got a highly textured wall, I can't recommend enough getting some recessed lighting, or even this quarter could even have down lights, but you want the lights nice and close to your texture because it washes down on it and accentuates that texture. It's really effective. So guys, be brave. Features are fun and they're actually pretty easy to change. So don't feel like that they're a huge commitment that you're never going to be able to get out of. We also have a website, thegoodroom.net, and on it, there's lots of free videos, and there's even a really cool quiz we've created where you answer a few questions and we kind of tell you what your design style is and give you like the key elements that you need to include if you're aiming for that style. And you can be more than one style, so don't worry. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. Hope to hear from you soon. And of course, we love to socialize and the opportunity to get to know you. And we are at all the usual haunts. On Instagram, we are at _goodroom. Don't forget the underscore. On Facebook, we are at The Good Room Design. And within Facebook, we have a really cool private Facebook group, which we encourage you to join because it's there that we actually chat. People post pictures, people post tips. I do sort of extensive how-to videos and I comment on other people's photos. So it's a bit of an opportunity for some free interior design. And on Pinterest, we've got loads of cool pictures on The Good Room. Hope to see you there.